Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another webinar in our Market Access and International Approvals webinar series. My name is Kevin, and I'm part of the Certification and Approval Technical Staff here at ISED Compliance Laboratories. Today I'll be presenting to you the certification and approval regulations, as well as the technical requirements for electrical equipment, electronics, and wireless products and device approval in Canada. ISED Laboratories is an EMC and RF compliance test lab and product certification body, and we are experts in global regulatory approvals for radio frequency devices. So today we'll be going over the requirements for radio frequency and telecommunications approvals in Canada. In this webinar, we will provide an overview of the major topics necessary to understand how to get your radio devices on the right track for authorization and distribution in Canada. If you have any questions on the topics presented today, or any other immediate questions regarding compliance testing and product certification, you can reach us at info@vista-compliance.com. Without further ado, let's begin the presentation. So starting with a brief overview, what is the ISED? Formerly known as Industry Canada, or ISED, the ISED is the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development of Canada. The Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, ISED, formerly known as Industry Canada, is the federal department of the Government of Canada that oversees growth, trade, and competition in the Canadian economy with the goal of building a fair, efficient, and competitive marketplace. This includes regulating broadcasting and telecommunications by radio, television, wire, satellite, and cable, and enforcing the communication laws in Canada. The Certification and Engineering Bureau of Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada provides a certification service for radio equipment and a registration service for terminal equipment in Canada. Testing of either radio or terminal equipment to establish compliance with the Innovation, Science, and Economic Development Canada standards is performed in private sector laboratories. Certification is mandatory prior to marketing or selling your products in Canada. So moving on to the ISED equipment categories. ISED has two different certification procedures for devices falling under either Category 1 or Category 2, and that's also known as Certification or Supplier's Declaration of Conformity, also known as the SDOC. So what is the difference between Category 1 equipment and Category 2 equipment? Category 1 equipment must meet the requirements of the applicable Canadian standard and requires certification. Category 2 equipment must also meet the requirements of the applicable Canadian standard, but is certification exempt. Category 1 radio apparatuses require a Technical Acceptance Certificate, otherwise known as the TAC, issued by a ISED recognized certification body. The Supplier's Declaration of Conformity is the conformity assessment scheme used for Category 2 radio broadcasting and interference-causing equipment. The responsible party tests the Category 2 equipment and ensures that it meets the appropriate technical standards. The responsible party also labels the equipment and fulfills any other administrative requirements as required by the standard, such as user manual notices and test report retention. Equipment testing does not have to be performed by a recognized ISED testing laboratory. Starting with Category 2 equipment, these are generally interference-causing equipment, which can be a device, machinery, or equipment other than a radio apparatus or terminal equipment that causes or is capable of causing interference to radio communication and are exempt from certification. Here's a common list of Category 2 equipment standards for non-radio devices. ICES Gen is used in conjunction with the ICES standard applicable to the specific type of interference-causing equipment for assessing the equipment compliance with the ISED requirements. Where requirements in the ISED Gen is different from those in the equipment-specific ICES standard, the specific requirements take precedence. If you look closely, you may ask, the last standard is a radio standard, but why those devices require certification? while radio standards in Category 2 are either for very low frequency devices or have set very low field strength and power as their limit. So long as transmitters meet the ISED requirement and they don't produce significant interference, certification can be exempt. The manufacturer, importer, and/or distributor shall, however, ensure that Category 2 equipment complies with all of the ISED applicable procedures and standards. The test report shall be retained for as long as the model is manufactured, imported, distributed, sold, offered for sale, and/or leased in Canada. The test report shall be made available to ISED upon request. Now looking at Category 1 equipment. Category 1 equipment consists of radio apparatus that requires certificate issued by an ISED recognized certification body. Certified Category 1 equipment are publicly listed in ISED's radio equipment list, which lists all radio equipment that have been certified for use in Canada. Here is a list of common Category 1 equipment standards for radio equipment. RSS Gen must be used in conjunction with other RSS standards as applicable to the specific type of radio apparatus for assessing its compliance with ISED requirements. No person shall import, distribute, lease, offer for sale, or sell Category 1 radio apparatuses in Canada unless they are listed on ISED's radio equipment list. ISED regulates radio frequency devices containing in electronic electrical products that are capable of emitting radio frequency energy by radiation, conduction, or other means. These products have the potential to cause interference to radio services operating in the radio frequency range of 9 kHz to 3000 GHz. Devices operating in this frequency range are considered Category 1 radio devices, which require conformity assessment by means of certification. Interference-causing equipment in Category 2 radio devices fall under the supplier's responsibility, and manufacturers maintain test lab evaluation results and supplier's declaration of conformity. Category 2 radio devices and other categories such as industrial, scientific, medical equipment, and other radio apparatuses are covered under the certification process. These products generate and emit radio frequency energy. Products that use licensed radio spectrum from a fixed microwave link to cellular telephones to mobile broadband services are subject to conformity assessments by certification. And moving on, we're going to talk about interference-causing equipment, which refers to any equipment other than radio apparatuses that is capable of causing interference to radio communication, and is covered by ISED's Interference-Causing Equipment Standard, otherwise known as ICEX. Examples of interference-causing equipment include AC and DC motors, mechanical light switches, basic electrical power tools, and other electronic electrical products containing no digital logic. A product classified as interference-causing equipment is not required to obtain conformity assessment by certification. And now let's talk about Category 2 equipment, which are radio apparatuses or broadcasting equipment that is exempt from certification and does not require a TAC or a certificate issued by a CED or interference-causing equipment. Today, the majority of electronic electrical products use digital logic, operating between 9 kHz and 3000 GHz, and are regulated under 47 CFR Part 15 Subpart B and G. These rules contain the requirements such as the test levels or limit for the results of the measurements. Examples of Category 2 equipment include information technology equipment, lighting equipment, Type 2 wireless chargers, or licensed exempt radio apparatuses. And supplier's declaration of conformity is required for Category 2 equipment. To summarize, supplier's declaration of conformity is generally for very low frequency devices, or have a very low field strength and power as the limit, so long as transmitters meet the ISED requirements and they don't produce significant interference, certification can be exempt. Next, we will look into radio apparatuses that generate and emit radio frequency energy and also require certification. And now let's discuss Category 1 equipment, license exempt. So Category 1 equipment are radio apparatuses that require a technical acceptance certificate, or otherwise known as a TAC, or a certificate issued by a recognized certification body, pursuant to radio communication regulations. Some examples of Category 1 equipment include wireless garage door openers, wireless microphones, RF universal remote control devices, wireless alarm systems, Wi-Fi transmitters, Bluetooth radio devices, radio transmitter modules, and Type 3 wireless chargers. And let's talk about radio apparatuses that are licensed. For equipment operating in licensed radio services, these products are the ones that use the licensed radio spectrum. These can range from a fixed microwave link to cellular telephone to mobile broadband services and are considered radio frequency devices that are subject to conformity assessments by a certification body. Some examples include a low-power TV transmitter, base station, licensed point-to-point microwave radios, private LAN mobile transmitters, aviation and marine radios, and etc. So to summarize, products that follow the certification procedure are required to be tested by an ISED recognized accredited testing laboratory, as well as have all of the supporting information and the evaluation results reviewed by a certification body to determine if the product complies with the ISED requirements. Finally, a certificate is issued by the certification body, and the equipment is listed in the radio equipment list. Products that fall under the SDOC also require testing, but it is the responsibility of the manufacturer to warrant that each unit of the equipment complies with the ISED rules and does not require certification body review. So now we know that RF devices require certification prior to import, sales, distribution, and operation in Canada. Let's take a look at an overview of the radio apparatus certification process. We will be providing information on the equipment certification requirements, label requirements, radio equipment listing requirements, end user notices, radio equipment designed as modules for installation in a host product, new products and modifications to be certified products, changes to products or standard requirements, and information on certification retention and audits. So let's start off with the testing requirements. Looking at the testing requirements for applicants, in general, it's one or two samples. Depending on how the measurement goes, more samples may be required. Within each category, the lead times for evaluation and measurement varies. It also further depends on the complexity, supported different interfaces and functionalities, and radio technology types. General equipment takes 1 to 2 weeks if it contains one radio technology such as Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Devices containing more than one tech, such as a combination of Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, may take longer. Lead times will increase significantly if SAR or DFS measurements are required. Sample requirements may also depend on the antenna type and if it's removable. Generally speaking, separate samples are needed for the RF conductive part and the radiative measurement. Samples must also be able to sweep over the full spectrum continuously. If there are multiple radio functions, multiple samples will be required if each sample only supports a single radio function. The measurement process will naturally take longer if there is a need for troubleshooting. And so here is the look at the testing requirements for the supplier's declaration of conformity. Even the initial testing will be performed, immunity testing is not required for Canada. At least one sample in end-user operation mode, including all necessary accessories, is required for AMC testing. Conductive emission is required if there is an AC power supply included or Ethernet ports. All ports must be populated during testing. Radiated emissions is required for all devices. And so next we're going to talk about conformity assessment. So for supplier's declaration of conformity, the responsible party, as specified in the rule, warrants that each unit of equipment complies with the applicable ISED rules. The responsible party maintains all of the required documentation demonstrating compliance with the applicable ISED rules. The responsible party prepares a compliance information statement to be supplied with the product at the time of marketing. And here's a look at the testing requirements for certification. EMC emissions testing will be performed. This includes conducted emissions and radiated emissions. We require additionally a conducted and radiated form of the equipment. These must be equipped with software to control the radio performance. RF testing and RF exposure measurements are also performed. A list of various test items are provided here. This includes antenna requirements, occupied bandwidth, maximum output power, power spectral density, conducted and radiated band edge, radiated spiritus emissions, dynamic frequency selection, and for RF exposure, we have specific absorption rate and maximum permissible exposure. So taking a look at the certification and review process, when all the required information has been received, our administrative review examines the documents to determine if all submittal evidence is complete, accurate, and correctly prepared for certification. A complete application is required before the technical review can begin and before the application can be processed. Once the administrative reviewer has determined that all necessary documents are present, the application documents will be forwarded to the technical reviewer. If the information and documentation is missing during the administrative review, the applicant will be informed about the administrative or technical information that is still needed. Next, a technical review shall be performed to determine if the applicant's test data and reports satisfy the applicable requirements. Items relating to the conformance of the equipment to the necessary technical requirements shall be evaluated, including but not limited to test procedures performed, test data, test equipment used, and including information about its calibration status, user manuals, schematics and block diagrams supplied by the manufacturer, operational description, supporting descriptions, and if necessary, plots or data as well. After completing the administrative review and the technical review, the findings from each shall be forwarded to the responsible party for certification. The responsible party person for certification shall analyze the findings and the recommendations from the administrative and technical revisions and then present a decision to the applicant and will review that the documentation provided is complete to take a decision about the certification of the device. For certification, when the applicant or manufacturer is not located within Canada, a Canadian company representative is required as certification. For certification, the Canadian representative shall be responsible for responding to all inquiries from ISED regarding the certified product, including providing audit samples at no charge to ISED. The applicant shall have a valid application and agreement for certification services for as long as the certified product is offered on the Canadian market. Applications must contain all the necessary information, including an application cover letter that describes the certification service being requested and the intended use of the radio product. Test reports that meet the requirements of RSS-Gen shall be included along with the completed test report cover sheet. Once the CV makes the decision to certify the product, the supporting information is uploaded to the ISED database. Next, we have a list of technical documentation, supporting information, and results of the testing evaluations of the certification body reviews to determine if the product complies with the ISED requirements. It's common to require a few rounds of updates to forms and documents before finalizing the submission to ISED. These documents include the ISED application form, the ISED agent authorization form, the RSS 102 attestation, ISED modular approval letter, only if it's a modular approval, ISED local representative, attestation letter, user manual, operation description, schematic, block diagram, EUT external photo, EUT internal photo, test setup, ISED label location and example, and ISED test report. And that covers the requirements. Next, we're going to be moving on to labeling requirements. So let's talk about labeling. The ISED certification number is prefixed with IC and is made up of the ISED assigned company number followed by applicant selected unique product number and is to be permanently indicated on the exterior of the product or displayed electronically. The UPN is commonly known as the HVIN or hardware version ID number, similar to a model number. The HVIN and the PMN should be on the product and the FVIN should be stored electronically. For modular approvals or limited modular approvals, the host product must be properly labeled to identify the modules within the host product. Devices with an integrated display may have the required label information represented electronically in an e-label instead of a physical label. Devices without an integrated display screen may have the labeling information represented through an audio message or a host device display screen connected by a physical connection, such as Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, or others, if the connection to a device with a display is mandatory for use. If the dimensions of the product are extremely small, or it is not practical to place the label or marking on the product, and if electronic labeling cannot be implemented, the label must be placed in a prominent location in the user manual supplied with the product. The user manual may be in electronic format. So completing labeling, we're going to go ahead and move on to radio equipment and requirements. So the radio equipment list is an Innovation in Science and Economic Development Canada publication listing radio equipment which has been certified for use in Canada. Certified Category 1 equipment shall be listed in ISED's radio equipment list. No person shall import, distribute, lease, offer for sale, or sell Category 1 radio apparatuses in Canada unless they are listed on ISED's radio equipment list. The certification body will list the PMN, HVIN, and ISED certification number indicated on any product, including by electronic display circulating on the Canadian market in the radio equipment list. Other technical details of the product, such as radio standard specifications, the operating frequency range, output power and watts, and emissions designation will be listed as well. Devices for which an application for a deferred REL listing date has been approved by ISED can be imported and distributed. Next, we're going to move on to user notices. User notices such as ISED Canada compliance statements stating that this device complies with ISED Canada license exempt RSS standards. Operation is subject to the following two conditions. 1. This device may not cause interference, and 2. This device must accept any interference, including interference that may cause undesired operation of the device, is required to be included with each unit of product offered for sale. The notice must be in both English and French. Moving on, we're going to talk about host and modular product requirements. So, going over host and modular products. A radio transmitter module can apply for certification. Modules can be installed in different end-user products referred to as a host product or host device by the certificate holder or any other equipment manufacturer. Then the host product may not require additional testing or a new certification for the transmitter function provided that the specific module or limited module device. For host products, the module or modules to be integrated into the host product must follow all requirements and instructions for the intended use and configuration provided by the module certificate holder. Host product and associated modules for the final product must meet all applicable requirements set out in RSS-GEN, including the radio frequency exposure compliance requirements in RSS 102. For modular approval, the module should have the RF circuitry shielded, buffered modulation, power regulation, comply with antenna provisions in the applicable standard, have been tested in a standalone configuration, and comply with RF exposure requirements in a host. If one of these conditions is not met, the applicant can apply for limited module approval, provided that the applicant has control over the final installation of the product, such that compliance of the end product is assured. An operating condition on the LMA certificate for the module would state that the module is only approved for use in a specific host. Next, we're going to talk about new and modified products. For new products, a new single product certification application for a single product version, either the final product or module, may be granted provided that the applicant has never been granted certification for the assigned HVIN or ISED certification number in the certification service application. All documents such as the ISED application form, user manual, operation description, schematic, block diagram, EUT photos, ISD test reports are required. Multiple versions of a product design are permitted to be certified under a single family certification service with one ISED certification number, provided that all the product variants within a family certification meet the following conditions. The enclosure and general appearance of all product versions in a family certification shall be identical except for the enclosure color and/or minor external cosmetic differences. Two or more versions of a product with one printed circuit board design with different frequency band technology is enabled by software. A new version of a certified product which may have minor PCB modifications to improve existing frequency band technologies and/or add non-RF features. All the product versions with the family certification shall be identical or have differences permitted under Class 1 or Class 3 permissive changes. And two or more versions of a product with two or more PCB designs with different frequency band technologies within identical enclosures are not permitted within a family certification. So next we're going to talk about modification of a certified product. When a device is modified, all proposed changes must be considered to determine the type of additional filing required. Some changes to consider can be the antenna, PCB hardware, enclosure, software, or new RF exposure evaluations. The general guideline is degradation. Changes to certified equipment are subject to permissive change requirements. Class 1 permissive change are modifications that do not degrade the emissions or change the physical characteristics. These changes do not require notice to ISED. Class 2 permissive changes are equipment changes that do change the RF characteristics or degrade the unwanted emissions of the product or significant physical modifications. Some examples are the addition of replacement or alternative antennas where higher gain antenna is used or a different type of antenna is used, when a device changes the RF exposure conditions, or when it is required to address co-location with other transmitter not covered by the original application. In these cases, notice to ISED is required. Any modification to a certified product may require recertification with ISED. The certificate holder shall inform the certification body of any changes that may affect compliance with the technical requirements of the regulations under which the product was originally certified. Class 3 changes include firmware modifications to a certified product that affect the RF characteristics of the product and firmware modifications to enable frequency bands without a hardware modification. Notice to ISED is required for Class 3 permissive changes, and a new and unique FBIN shall be provided. A certified module that is integrated into a new host product that results in changes to the original reported RF emission characteristics and/or RF exposure assessments is permitted under C4PC with or without firmware modification. Notice to ISED is required for Class 4 permissive changes, and the HMN shall be provided. Moving on, we're going to talk about adding new products to an existing certification. So let's go over what we're saying. A new certification may be obtained based on an existing certification with an application of a multiple listing of certification service. An applicant may request a new ISED certification number based on an existing product to obtain a new certificate from an existing product that has been certified. The applicant would apply for a new ISED certification number although the HBIN, PMN, and FPIN may be unchanged from the original certificate. The applicant must ensure that the product version is identical to those in the existing certification and declare that documents related remain unchanged and are still valid, and that the new product is identical to the certified product. Lastly, we're going to move on to audits and supplier responsibilities. So let's go over retention and audit. Certificate holders and all associated responsible parties such as manufacturers, importers, distributors, and vendors have a regulatory obligation to ensure that the product continues to meet all applicable standards throughout its entire life cycle. Post-certification audits will be conducted by ISED and the CB in order to ensure continuing compliance. The Technical Acceptance Certificate, otherwise known as the TAC holder, shall provide random radio product samples at the certificate holder's expense when requested by ISED or the CB for post-certification audit testing or for determining radio interference. It is the responsibility of the manufacturer to maintain all documentation as part of the responsibility for the retention of records and ensure that the manufactured products are in compliance. In the event of an investigation of non-compliance, the certificate holder will be asked to provide ISED with records of the quality control process, as well as any relevant information that could help identify issues related to compliance. All certificate holders will be able to demonstrate a quality control process used for production inspection and testing in accordance with good engineering practices. When ISED determines a product is non-compliant with the applicable standards and procedures, the certificate holder will be asked to provide a satisfactory remedial action to bring the product back into compliance. In the case where certificate holders are not reachable or unresponsive, the other responsible parties, importers, distributors, and vendors will be contacted to take prompt and effective remedial action. Lastly, certain files provided to ISED, such as block diagrams, operational descriptions, part list, tune-up information, software-defined radio and security information, and schematic diagrams qualify for confidential treatment. And so that wraps up the radio apparatus certification process. This concludes our webinar on hidden market access, certification, and approval for electrical equipment and wireless products. I hope this webinar was helpful for you in learning about how to certify your device and what the process for approval and certifications are like, as well as what the strict requirements may be applicable. Compliance with the technical requirements of ISED is required for all radio and telecom products and ensures that any wireless equipment does not degrade performance or cause interference with the existing network to which it is connected. Also, also providing suitable statements to the end user, and ensuring RF emissions comply with the relevant standards. All electrical equipment and devices require certification and testing prior to distribution or placement on the Canadian market. Vista Compliance Labs specializes in certification, approval, and compliance testing for electrical and radio frequency devices and is a 17025 accredited EMC RF compliance test lab and 17065 accredited product certification body. We are a telecommunications certification body in the United States, Canada, European Union, United Kingdom, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Japan, and we provide certification and approvals for all product types in countries all over the world. If you would like to stay in touch with the regulatory updates, follow us online. And if you have any questions,